If you drive across the United States on Interstate 80, somewhere between Lincoln, Nebraska, and Cheyenne, Wyoming, you will experience something that most Americans never feel in their entire lives. You will experience true emptiness, the kind of emptiness that makes your phone useless and your radio silent, the kind that stretches so far in every direction that the horizon starts to feel like a wall you can never reach. This is the Great Plains, the geographic heart of America, and it is dying. Not in a dramatic way, not with fire or flood, or any of the catastrophes that make headlines. The Great Plains are dying slowly and quietly, one abandoned farmhouse at a time, one closed school at a time, one young person driving east or west toward the coasts at a time. The center of America is hollowing out, while the rest of the country barely notices, too busy watching the crowded cities on either edge to pay attention to the vast middle that feeds them. A century ago, this land was supposed to be the future. Homesteaders flooded onto the plains in the late 1800s, lured by the promise of free land under the Homestead Act, and by the belief that rain would follow the plow, that farming itself would somehow change the climate and turn the semi-arid grasslands into a productive agricultural paradise. They built towns every 10 or 15 miles, close enough that a farmer could ride a horse to the general store and back in a single day. They founded churches and schools and newspapers. They planted crops and raised families and believed they were building something permanent. They were wrong about almost everything, except the part about building something. They did build something, and now we get to watch it crumble. The Great Plains stretch across parts of 10 states, from the Dakotas in the north to Texas in the south, from the Rocky Mountain foothills in the west to the Missouri River in the east. But the empty section, the part that demographers call the rural Heartland crisis zone, runs through Nebraska, Kansas, eastern Colorado, and Wyoming. This is where counties are losing population faster than anywhere else in America. This is where the median age keeps climbing because the young people leave and the old people stay behind. This is where entire towns have fewer residents than a single apartment building in Brooklyn. The numbers are staggering when you take time to understand what they mean. More than 700 counties across the Great Plains have lost population since 1950, and the losses are accelerating rather than slowing down. Some counties in western Kansas have population densities below 2 people per square mile, which is lower than the threshold the Census Bureau used to define frontier territory in 1890. By that measure, parts of America have actually become more frontier-like over the past century rather than less. How did this happen? How did the heart of the country become its emptiest chamber? The answer begins with technology, because technology has a way of solving problems while creating entirely new ones that nobody anticipated. In 1900, farming the Great Plains required enormous amounts of human labor. Planting, harvesting, and maintaining crops meant families needed many children, and those children needed schools, and those schools needed teachers, and those teachers needed places to buy groceries, get haircuts, and attend church on Sundays. A single farm might employ a dozen workers during harvest season, and all those workers spent money in nearby towns, creating jobs for merchants, mechanics, doctors, and everyone else who makes a community function. Tractors replaced horses. Combines replaced teams of harvest workers. GPS-guided machinery replaced the need for multiple operators. A single farmer today can work land that would have required 50 people to manage a century ago, and that farmer does not need to live anywhere near the land being farmed. Corporate agriculture has replaced family farming across much of the plains, with operations spanning thousands of acres managed by skeleton crews, who live in regional centers rather than small towns. The efficiency is remarkable from a production standpoint. American agriculture feeds the world, and the Great Plains are a massive part of that achievement. Kansas alone produces enough wheat to make 36 billion loaves of bread per year. Nebraska's corn and cattle operations are among the largest on the planet. The land is more productive than ever, churning out food and fiber in quantities that would have seemed miraculous to the homesteaders who first broke the sod. But efficiency is the enemy of population density. Every technological improvement that allows one person to do the work of 10 means 9 people have to find something else to do, somewhere else to live. And on the Great Plains, somewhere else almost always means leaving. The climate does not help matters. The Great Plains experience some of the most extreme weather conditions in North America, a combination of brutal factors that makes everyday life harder than it needs to be. Summers bring temperatures above 100 degrees, turning the landscape into a furnace that bakes the soil and strains air conditioning systems in towns where repair technicians might be 2 hours away. Winters bring blizzards that can strand residents for days, temperatures that plunge below zero, and wind chills that make exposed skin dangerous within minutes. Spring means tornado season, that uniquely American phenomenon where the sky turns green, the sirens wail, and everyone heads for basements or storm shelters while the most powerful storms on Earth tear paths of destruction across the landscape. The Great Plains sit squarely in Tornado Alley, and while tornadoes are statistically unlikely to hit any particular spot, the psychological weight of knowing they could hit creates a background anxiety that residents learn to live with but never quite forget. And then there is the wind. The endless, relentless sanity-testing wind blows across the plains almost every single day, sometimes gently, and sometimes with enough force to push trucks off highways. The wind erodes soil, dries out crops, and makes simple tasks like walking across a parking lot feel like a physical struggle. People who grow up on the plains stop noticing the wind after a while, the same way people in noisy cities stop noticing traffic. Newcomers notice it immediately, and for many of them, the wind alone is reason enough to leave. The young people who grow up in Great Plains towns face a choice that previous generations never had to make so starkly. They can stay in communities where the job options are limited to agriculture, healthcare for aging populations, and whatever retail and service businesses manage to survive on thin margins. Or they can leave for cities where the job market is broader, the social options are wider, and the cultural amenities that young people crave actually exist. The internet has made this choice even more painful by showing rural kids exactly what they are missing in places like Denver or Kansas City or Austin, cities that feel impossibly vibrant compared to towns where the movie theater closed 15 years ago. Most of them leave. The statistics are brutal on this point. Rural Great Plains counties lose between 20 and 40% of their young adults within 5 years of high school graduation, and the ones who leave for college almost never come back. The communities they leave behind grow older and smaller with each passing year, trapped in a demographic death spiral where declining population leads to declining services, leads to more people leaving, and leads to further decline. Schools consolidate and then consolidate again, forcing children to ride buses for hours each day to reach classrooms that might be 50 miles from home. Hospitals close because there are not enough patients to keep them financially viable. That means the nearest emergency room might be 90 minutes away on a good day and unreachable during a blizzard. Churches that once anchored community life merge or shut down entirely as congregations shrink below the threshold needed to support a pastor. The towns that remain have taken on a particular character that anyone who has driven through the region will recognize instantly. Those are main streets lined with empty storefronts, their windows covered with plywood or old newspaper. Grain elevators tower over clusters of houses, many of them abandoned and slowly collapsing back into the earth. Signs advertising lots for sale have been for sale for years because nobody is buying. American flags fly from porches as if in defiance of the decline happening all around them. Some observers have proposed radical solutions to the emptying of the Great Plains. The Buffalo Commons idea, first suggested in the 1980s, called for returning large portions of the plains to native grassland, reintroducing bison herds, and essentially admitting that the agricultural experiment of the past century and a half had failed. The proposal was controversial then, and remains controversial now, touching on deep questions about American identity and the meaning of progress, and whether admitting defeat in any form is acceptable to a nation built on the mythology of endless expansion. Others see opportunity in the emptiness, arguing that remote work and changing lifestyle preferences might bring new residents to places where land is cheap and space is abundant. The pandemic accelerated some of this migration, with small towns across the plains reporting modest population increases for the first time in decades as people fled crowded cities. But it remains unclear whether this represents a genuine reversal of long-term trends or just a temporary blip that will fade as the memory of lockdowns recedes. What seems certain is that the Great Plains will never again be what they were in 1900, when small towns dotted the landscape like stars across the sky, and the future seemed limitless for anyone willing to work hard enough. That vision was always partly illusion, built on subsidies and luck, and the brief window when technology required human labor, rather than replacing it. The homesteaders who settled this land were brave and determined, and ultimately wrong about what the land could sustain over the long term. Today, the Great Plains produce more food than ever while supporting fewer people than at any point since white settlement began. The tractors roll across fields that stretch to the horizon, driven by GPS and monitored by satellites, tended by workers who live hours away in cities that offer the services and amenities that small towns can no longer provide. The wind blows across empty main streets and through the broken windows of abandoned farmhouses, carrying with it the ghosts of communities that once believed they were building something permanent. The heart of America keeps beating, keeps producing, keeps feeding the nation and the world. But fewer and fewer people remain to hear it, and those who do grow older every year, watching the young drive away toward coasts and cities that promise everything the plains cannot offer. This is not a tragedy in the traditional sense, not a sudden catastrophe that demands immediate response. It is something quieter and in some ways sadder, the slow unwinding of a dream that never quite matched reality, the gradual emptying of a landscape that turned out to be better suited for machines than for the communities that humans need to thrive. The Great Plains will endure. The question is whether anyone will be left to call them home.